Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to our Friday Namaste experience. Lovely to be here with all of you, joining with my mighty companions. So, I have a question to begin. If a gift is offered to you, what must you do to enjoy that gift? Receive it. Yes. You have to be willing to receive the gift. If someone offers you a gift and you just keep your arms or your hands closed, and you can even say thank you, but still, if you don't receive the gift and then unwrap that gift, you're not going to be able to enjoy that gift. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And this is true of the divine gifts, the gifts that come to us from the divine as well. So if God's peace and joy are mine, what must I do in order to enjoy God's peace and joy? Receive it. To be open to receive, not reject. And yet the ego or the split mind gives lip service to receiving, doesn't it? It doesn't truly receive. It doesn't completely open and allow. We have to be completely open. We need to be humble. We need to receive the gifts of God, and God's gifts are always peace and joy and harmony and, of course, love. So today, the lesson for the day from A Course in Miracles is God's peace and joy are mine. Amrit just finished writing it on the board in the back. God's peace and joy are mine. Say that with me. God's peace and joy are mine. And I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to give me a solid yes or no. Are you ready to receive that?
Yes.
Are you willing to receive that?
Yes.
Are you willing to give that same gift to others?
Yes.
All right. So let's begin. We're going to sing that a few times. So let me sing the chorus all the way through, and I'll tell you when to come in, okay? God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. Today, God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. You got it? Sing that with me. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine today. God's peace and joy are mine. 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 Claim that now. God's peace and joy are mine today. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. Today we will accept them all, knowing they belong to each one of us, and we will try to understand that these gifts increase as we receive them and give them away. Here we go. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. begin? Remember, when we sing, we pray twice. Such a beautiful way to open and receive. And I want to talk about that line just for a second, because what we're saying is God's peace and joy are mine. What could that mean but that there is a peace and a joy that surpasses understanding? There is a peace and a joy that cannot be understood by the mind. There is a peace and a feeling and a reality of joy that transcends everything that I've ever considered in this world of separation. That's the peace and the joy that is mine. It's important for us to realize that we're not talking about our idea of peace, which is always something with an opposite, or that joy has the opposite of sorrow. It's God's peace and joy that are mine. The peace and the joy without opposite, beyond understanding. Today is Good Friday. So this is a day in the Christian calendar when we commemorate something that didn't seem to make sense. Especially it didn't make sense to those who considered Jesus to be the Messiah. The Messiah in the Jewish mind was supposed to lift the entire country and overcome the oppressors, the Roman Empire, and to begin a new era in the line of King David. But that's not what happened on Good Friday. On Good Friday, it all fell apart, or at least it seemed to. Once again, it didn't make any sense to the people who had pinned all of their hopes, all of their dreams upon this amazing Spirit and Christ-filled man. But none of the things of the divine make sense to the mortal mind, to the split mind. It's important to remember that the idea of a peace and joy without opposite to the human mind seems impossible. But the moment we realize that in my mind, in my perception, it is impossible, but in God's, it is already done. In God's mind, it is already accomplished. Just as the resurrection was already accomplished within the crucifixion. The holy, perfect child of God had to prove that death was impossible by seeming to die and then rising again. But we are all called into that same reality. Good Friday may be a day where we commemorate what seems to be a terrible day. We drape the crosses in black and we strip the altar on Holy Thursday. But we do that so that something new can come in, something that cannot be considered by the human mind, but something that is already fully realized by divine mind. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. We can consider it, and yes, it does start to make sense when we begin to come into the experience, when we lay aside that split mind that we have claimed until now and allow something new. Oh, I'm sorry. Johannes, I almost forgot. Johannes, I would love for you to come up. I just get rolling.
I was enjoying what you were saying.
Today is the day we share with Johannes, but is there anything so far that I've said that you would disagree with?
No, not at all.
And as you can see, we're both draped in black as well to commemorate Good Friday.
Good Friday, yes. Actually, talking about what you just said, I would like to share what Charles Fillmore, the creator or co-founder of Unity Movement, said about crucifixion.
Please.
It is exactly what you were talking about. What he says is, I'm going to read what exactly his words. The crucifixion symbolizes the elimination of the errors that have crystallized in our minds, the death of the personality, so that the Christ mind can be expressed in its totality.
The Christ mind can be expressed in
Yes,
its
that's what we
totality.
call the unity, the Christ mind, and that we can the enlightened.
Well, St.
being
Paul
or
said we must put on
witness.
the mind of Christ, didn't he?
Exactly. So that's what it's exactly your words, but what you're meaning, what you mean with different words, but it's the same thing.
Yes.
It's the
If we're
same.
trying to understand this with our human minds, it is ununderstandable. We will grasp at straws. And that is why, as Charles Fillmore or Paul or any illumined being will say, we must put on the mind of Christ. Even if you use different words for that, you don't use the word Christ. In the Eastern tradition, we would talk about illumination. We would talk about it in other ways, but it's still the same thing. It's not different in one religion and different, from another. It's all the same. The words are different, but words are symbols of symbols. Who cares about the words? It's the reality.
Exactly. I was doing some research for the unity, new thought meaning, and it says metaphysically, a crucifixion symbolizes any experience in our life which is an opportunity for us to cross out one more human error or belief in the separation from God. Is that, don't we feel like a crucifixion when we go through those difficult times, turmoil, and of suffering or pain or sadness or disturbing thoughts of not knowing what to do? It feels like a crucifixion. But metaphysically, what it means is an opportunity for us to see, to face what Carl Jung called the shadow, the ego, and to let all those thoughts and beliefs go.
I guess if
And
we
then for the resurrection to go.
Yeah. If we want to look at Jungian psychology, the shadow is the crucifixion.
Yes.
And we must go through the shadow. Enlightenment comes through the shadow. Isn't that amazing? But when we try to spiritual our way around this or do spiritual bypass, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get around the shadow. Let's see if we can get around, but there is no around the shadow. There is only through the shadow, through the crucifixion into the resurrection, through the thoughts and the ideas of death, or that death could contain the holy, perfect child of God. It cannot, but we must experience that, not in our minds or our intellect, but within our whole being. And it is when we experience it within our whole being that we realize that state of wholeness.
Yeah.
See?
Yes. Y punto.
Anything else you want to share from here?
I have other thoughts. I said, in Jesus' specific crucifixion represents the final, complete crossing out once and for all human error, the limitation, and the removal of all belief in separation from God. And then it says the final overcoming that we shall all make someday. We will all go through that and just accept the resurrection. That's our final destiny. Now, the time, as the Course in Miracles says, the time we are willing to do the work, that is our free will. That's what we choose. The curriculum is already written. The process is already, we all know, but each one of us, because we have free will, because the freedom, we choose when we are going to face that shadow, when we are going to face that ego, when we are going to face these things that are holding us back into the awakening of our oneness with God. That's our free will. When are we going to do it? It's up to us. It's up to us.
So the perceptual mind looks at the idea of death and considers it as the end of being. I am no longer a being, a human being. I have set aside my body, and so I am no longer what I thought I was. Right? Does that make sense? That's the perceptual idea of death, setting aside my being. But there is also, and what we are coming into through this process of resurrection, a perfect state of non-being. Okay, a perfect state of non-being. So I want to share something that brings to light this perfect state of non-being. Let me put it up.
Jimmy, you're muted.
Jim,
Like I said, a state
Brother
of perfect
James.
non-being.
There we go.
All right. I don't know what's going on here, but we'll just keep rolling with
Some
it.
energy.
All right, here we go. Let's try this again. The state of perfect non-being. You, each one of you, is being called into a state of perfect non-being, which until now you have interpreted as death or loss. As death or loss. Just as those around Jesus on Good Friday considered it a state of complete and total loss. All of their hopes and dreams were pinned on this one man, and now it's gone. A state of total loss. But perfect non-being is actually the dissolving of the separate self and the rising or the resurrection of your sacred self. The rising of your sacred self. When the sacred self rises, it is transformed and is no longer bound by the same laws that once seemed so insurmountable. Once again, when the sacred self, the reality within you, is transformed, just as Jesus was transformed, people would talk to him and not realize who they were talking to until he would break the bread or until he would leave. Then suddenly they would say, were not our hearts on fire when we were with him? That's how they knew. Couldn't our hearts be on fire every moment? Because every moment we're speaking to the Christ, the resurrected Christ. So once again, when the sacred self rises, it is transformed and is no longer bound by the laws, same laws that once seemed so insurmountable. This is the transcendent reality we share, regardless of you being aware or unaware of what is real. To realize the state of perfect non-being, simply relax. Just relax and be present to the presence of I am. There's no effort. There's no trying. You don't need to do anything. You just need to be everything. A river flows without effort toward the ocean, just as you flow effortlessly toward the ocean of infinite being. If you surrender to the current, you will realize that though the quality of the river and the ocean differ, in other words, the ocean is of salt while the river is clear of salt, they are actually connected. All the rivers are connected as one. You will also realize that when the river reaches the ocean, the river's current is no longer required. Isn't that interesting? The river's current is no longer required when it reaches the ocean. What is the purpose of the river's current? It is to draw you to the ocean. It is to pull you into that infinite state of being. Once you arrive, your being expands to include not only the river, but every river that empties into the ocean. Wow. Just think about the metaphysics of that. You now include every river. Every river comes together as one in this infinite ocean of grace. So let the current take you then. Empty yourself of every longing and desire. Hold on, let me go back. It is this emptying that's important. I don't want to forget that. It is this emptying of the idea of self that is important. So let the current take you, and then empty yourself of every longing and desire, but being one with the infinite ocean of grace. Think of nothing but this. Then you will dissolve, and you will know that the river and the ocean are one.
Wow.
This is where we find ourselves in this moment, dissolving, transforming, becoming illumined, setting aside all of those ideas of right and wrong and good and bad, and just simply flowing, being taken by that current into that infinite ocean of grace. And it's not hard. Just empty, just surrender, and just trust.
It is this emptying that is important. It is the letting go, releasing everything that we know do not come from God, from holiness, beauty, emptying everything, and to be present just for God and for love. It's trust.
Just trust.
Surrender. Let yourself go to be taken to that current of love and trust. Not holding back, not. It's just surrendering. That's what I feel.
You know, I have another image that's coming into my mind of being pulled by that current. We always have a choice. If you want, you can throw yourself into the current, and your body is just being taken by it. And every once in a while, the water gets, really tumultuous. No. Turbulent, thank you. And you get the white water and you're thrown around. And that could be difficult, right? Or you can trust your mighty companions. And you can join together. And what is that? Have you ever been rafting on a river? You're in a great big inflated raft, and you're together, and you're just gliding over the top and having the time of your life. Why can't it be like that? We don't have to be pulled under and gasping for breath. Why don't we join together as we are right now? We are right now on that beautiful raft. We are flowing down that river, being taken by that current, having the time of our lives. How many of you can honestly say you are having the time of your life right now?
Yes,
I know I am.
Oh my God, I am.
That's because we're joined together within this single intention. And when we're joined together in a single intention of awakening, of that realization that the holy, perfect child of God cannot die, that resurrection is assured, then we are taken and we are joyful and we are just going down that river, smiling the whole way. So I tell you what, let's sing this chorus, the peace, God's peace and joy are mine, one more time as we let this lesson sink even deeper. Then we're going to bring Vicky in. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine today. God's peace joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. So imagine that we're all in that raft together, being pulled joyously over that white water. And even though it's moving fast and furious, we're having the time of our lives together. Here we go. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine today. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. So Vicky, if you are out there, we're going to turn it over to you and let you take us home.
Okay, Father James and Johannes and everybody, good morning. This is the Triduum. Am I saying that correctly, Father James? Triduum. Good.
I always turn to Michael for the writing.
Anyway, so the only thing I realize for myself is in order to get in that boat, or in order to not let the shadow interfere anymore, it isn't that we have to do something to receive what is our inheritance, what is natural, the joy and peace of God. What it is that we have to stop doing something. We have to stop defending against it. And we don't realize what we're doing when we are stopping the flow. When we are seeking for a solution, or trying to fix something out here, or are running about here and there to get something from someone or as something, at that time, we're blocking what is natural, that natural flow that will take us through the rapids, will take us through everything. So the only condition we're asked is literally to receive. And in order to receive, we have to stop not receiving. So when we defend against that natural current that brings us home, it's because our eyes are on the split, on time, on our personalities, on everything else. And we're looking for solutions out here for out here problems, whatever they might be. And the way through the shadow, like Johannes was saying, we have to move through the shadow, is to allow it to be what it is without trying to stop it, trying to make it go away. It's about that welcome, welcome, welcome everything, and keep our eye on the eternal. James, like that quote you did earlier in the week that I love so much, that the soul has its eye on us and we should have our eye on our soul. Because when we do that and we do not defend against it, we get out of the way. And when we are out of the way, that natural current takes us. And then it's as if we can get in that raft together. And that's what true joining is. Together we join in not defending against illusions and against what we think we need here and trying to solve and get, but we relax into that presence of our soul, and it is a step of faith. It's what Holy Saturday is. It's letting the crucifixion take away whatever it is we think we wanted here, and waiting a moment to rise up as our natural self, sacred self, because we're not defending against it. All we were was defending against it by bringing our own solutions. And the simple solution is that the shadow dissolves when we stop defending it and stop trying to solve it or get anything from it or protect it. And or think of it as the boat. I love the image of everyone being in the boat. It's like being on a great Disney ride together and everyone's enjoying it. But what if one person gets frantic and gets up and is running around the boat and trying to tip it? And they're, being frantic. It really makes it difficult for everyone to enjoy it. So The gift is to let the shadow come. If this is Good Friday, whatever our crucifixion points are, it's wherever we think the illusion gave us something, or that we still want something. I want a better home, I want a better relationship. Whatever it is we think we want, let it be. Don't defend against it. Don't try to get rid of it. Just let it be and keep our eye on the sacred. And that will dissolve. That will be a dissolving of what we were doing to protect ourselves from our natural sacred energy, sacred self. We won't be defending against it. We'll be open to receiving it. And then, this is for Leslie. I have to tell you, I woke up with a beautiful dream this morning. It was a beautiful dream, and it was short. And all it was is there were many of us walking, and I'm looking and thinking, oh my gosh, this is a lot of time where a lot of people are dying. And all of a sudden, instead of dying, they went through a moment where it looked like they were going to collapse, and they got right back up again and kept walking. And I feel like that's what we are called to do. We are called to be here in time in a resurrected heart and mind that does not resist our sacred self, does not defend against it by trying to solve anything here, but lets the solution of everything work through us to give freely of that energy, that whole solution, to wherever we find ourselves here in time.
Mm.
My dear friend Beatrice, it is her birthday today.
Beatrice's birthday?
Yes.
Oh, happy birthday, Beatrice. Lovely to see you.
Thank you so much. Nice to
Birthday to you.
thank you. Thank you.
So Vicky, as you were talking, I had one more image come into my mind, which I think is helpful. As some of you know, Vicky, as you know, I lived for a while in a floating house on the Columbia River in Portland, one of the greatest rivers in the US. And I loved it. And I had a paddle board. And one of my favorite things was to go out on my stand-up paddle board. And we're talking about current and how easy this is and how gentle this can be if we are simply flowing with the current.
Yes.
However, what the ego tries to do on its own, what we're constantly trying to do when we try and do this on our own, is we're trying to paddle against the current. So what I would do, just for fun, really, is I would get on my board and I would paddle upriver as far as I could before I would be exhausted, because it's hard. You're having to fight. This is a strong current on that river, and I'm paddling for a good half hour, a good workout, and I get pretty far. But then what do? I just sit down. The paddleboard rights itself, turns right back, starts just being. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to paddle. I don't. Maybe I have my paddle in the back just to kind of keep it straight. But other than that, there is no effort required. When we let the current of grace take us, the current knows where to go. It knows where the ocean is. I apparently don't know where the ocean is because I'm going the wrong way. And I wonder why there's so much effort. How many of you have ever wondered why there's so much effort in making your way through the world? That's because we're going the wrong way. Stop. Let the current right your paddleboard and let it take you, and it will take you right to where you need
That's
to be.
the key, trust. So you know that you are being taken care of. It's trust and surrender. It feels so good. Just the image of letting myself go and to be taken into that flow. Oh, it's wonderful. It's trust and surrender. That's all is needed. That's
Amen. Surrender, Dorothy. That's what we're going to do today.
Yes.
So we may have time for one or two questions. We're trying to do that now at the end of our sessions, open up to see if anyone has a question about any of this, not comments or not trying to add on to anything, but simply to get clarity. If anyone has a question that they would like clarity on, either here in front of me or in the Zoom room. Let's just see if we have one or two that we can do briefly. And if not, we'll just go ahead and close. Anybody have a question? Everybody clear? I don't see any hands waving in the Zoom room. If you do have a question, you need to raise your hand by hitting the reactions button. Otherwise, I won't see you. We're good. Okay.
We're all flowing away.
We are flowing away.
We are flowing away, blowing in the wind.
Yes.
That's what we're going to do. So have a wonderful Good Friday. And remember, the resurrection is only the first step in the proving that the holy, perfect child of God cannot die. The resurrection is assured for each one of us. Sound good? Amen.
Amen. Oh, you have a question?
Do we have a question? We're not ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to do our final prayer. So everybody, if you would like, you can rise. We're going to do our prayer of protection. Here we go. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Amen, amen, amen. Punto.
Punto. Happy Easter, everybody.
Thank
We'll see you on.
I
We
love you
will
all.
have our
Thank
Sunday
you,
Easter
Vicki.
service.
Happy
as
birthday,
always.
Beatrice.
So we'll see you then. And happy birthday, Beatrice.
Thank
Bye
you
bye
for a
for now.
wonderful message today.
Happy Easter.
Love to all.